All right, listeners, buckle up because today we're going deep on on-premise AI.
On-premise AI.
And not just like the theory,
Right.
but how companies are actually using it right now.
Yeah, it's happening.
And to help us unpack all of this, we're going to zoom in on one company in particular,
Okay.
Hexacode, and their product,
Mm.
which is wild, called the Hexacube.
Wild in a good way, I hope.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
It's AI in a box, literally a box.
It really is, yeah. It kind of flips the script on how we think about AI usually.
Yeah.
Like instead of all your data going up to the cloud, to these massive data centers, it all happens right there on your premises.
So you're in total control. You're not relying on someone else's servers or infrastructure or anything.
Exactly. Yeah, you've got the reign.
Wow, I bet that's appealing to a lot of people,
Yeah.
especially with all the data privacy stuff going on these days.
Oh, absolutely. Data security is a huge factor, probably the biggest one.
Okay, so data security, but what else is driving this move towards on-premise AI?
Well, control over your data is one thing, but it also comes down to cost control and customization.
Right.
With cloud-based AI, you're always at the mercy of those subscription fees
Oh yeah, those can add up.
and usage charges and all that. On-premise gives you a different model, more like you buy it and it's yours.
So you're not constantly paying as you go, more of an upfront investment.
Right.
Okay, interesting. So let's talk more about this Hexacube then.
Sure.
From what I've read, it's not just like a souped-up server.
No, it's way more than that.
It's designed to be seen, right? Like it's almost a statement piece.
Yeah, it's meant to be displayed, not ticked away in a server room.
Interesting.
They really want it to be part of the environment, hinting at this future where AI is just woven into our spaces,
Oh, wow.
potentially even interacting with us directly, like almost like a smart assistant, but on a whole other level.
So it's not just crunching data in the background. It could be actively participating in the workplace.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a pretty bold vision.
And are there companies actually using this already? Like, is it just a concept or is it actually out there in the real world?
Oh, no, it's real. They've already got clients using it, all kinds of industries, too.
Yeah, like what? Give me some examples.
Well, you've got big pharma companies using it, real estate firms, even hotels.
Hotels, what are they doing with AI in a box?
Well, think about it. Personalized guest experiences, optimizing operations, managing all those complex systems.
That's amazing. AI running the hotel, I love it.
It's pretty wild.
And, I was reading that Hexacube is supposed to be really easy to use, like no coding required.
Yeah, that's a big part of their pitch.
That almost sounds too good to be true. Is it really that simple?
They've really tried to make it user-friendly. The idea is to empower businesses of all sizes,
Yeah.
not just the ones with huge tech departments, to actually use AI.
That's a good point. Democratizing AI, making
Yeah.
it accessible.
Yeah.
But I mean, under the hood, it's still using some pretty complex stuff, right? Like LLMs.
Oh, absolutely. LLMs are a core part of it, but they've done a lot of work to make them more approachable.
Okay, could you remind us what LLMs are exactly and maybe explain how they fit into what Hexacube is doing?
Sure. So LLMs stand for large language models, and they're basically the brains behind a lot of the AI we see today, like those chatbots that can hold a conversation,
Right.
or those tools that can generate different creative text formats, like poems or scripts even.
So if I wanted to write a song with AI, I'd need an LLM.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it.
But Hexacube actually takes it a step further with something called RAG.
RAG, what's that stand for?
It stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Retrieval Augmented Generation.
And what it does is it combines the power of LLMs with the ability to tap into your own specific data.
So instead of relying on some generic AI model, it's using my data to give me tailored insights.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like having an AI assistant that knows your business inside and out because it's been trained on your data.
That sounds incredibly powerful. And this is where the on-premise aspect becomes even more important, right?
Right, because your data never leaves your control.
You're not sending it off to some third-party cloud provider.
Exactly. You're keeping it all in-house, which gives you that extra level of security and peace of mind.
And that brings us back to that control factor we talked about earlier, right? There's so much concern about data privacy these days.
Absolutely. And this is where on-premise AI shines. You're the gatekeeper of your data. You decide how it's used, who has access to it.
No more worrying about your data being used for something you didn't agree to or ending up in the wrong hands.
Exactly. You're in control.
But I imagine there are some people out there who might argue that cloud AI is constantly improving, and wouldn't that be better in the long run?
It's a valid point. There's definitely a lot of innovation happening in the cloud AI space.
Right.
But the key difference here is control.
Control.
With Hexacube, you're not just along for the ride. You're making the decisions about your AI, how it evolves, how it's used.
So it's about finding that balance between innovation and control.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's talk about costs for a minute, because I know a lot of people assume that on-premise AI is going to be way more expensive.
Yeah, that's a common misconception.
Right.
Think about it this way. With cloud-based AI, you're essentially renting access. You're paying for every interaction, every API call.
So it's like a subscription service.
Exactly. And those costs can really add up, especially if you're using AI extensively.
Whereas with Hexacube,
With Hexacube, you make the initial investment in the hardware and software,
okay.
and then that's pretty much it. No more ongoing fees or surprises.
So you're not beholden to those ever-increasing cloud costs.
Right. It's a lot more predictable.
That's a pretty strong selling point, especially for businesses that are watching their budgets.
Absolutely. And it's worth noting that those cloud costs often involve something called tokens.
Tokens, what are those?
It's basically a way of measuring how much data is being processed by the AI. And you get charged per token. So if you're dealing with large amounts of data, those costs can really spiral.
So it's like a pay-as-you-go model, but for data processing.
Exactly. And it can be hard to predict how much you'll end up spending.
Right, so Hexacube offers predictable costs, total control over your data. What's not to love?
Well, there's always the question of technical expertise.
Nah, yeah, AI can feel intimidating for people who aren't, you know, coding wizards.
Right. And Hexacode recognizes that.
Okay.
So they've partnered with this UK company called Zui,
Zue?
and they basically act as your on-premise AI guides. They offer consulting, design support, even training.
So even if I'm not a tech expert, I can still get in on this on-premise AI action.
Absolutely. Zui is there to hold your hand through the whole process.
That's great. So it's not just about selling you a box and saying good luck.
No, they want to make sure you succeed with on-premise AI.
Okay, but let's back up for a second. We keep mentioning LLMs, but there's another term that pops up a lot in the AI world, NLP. How's that different?
Good point. NLP stands for natural language processing.
Okay.
And it's kind of the foundation for how AI understands and analyzes language.
So like translation or understanding the sentiment of a text.
Exactly. Things like that, extracting information from documents, it's more about understanding language.
Whereas LLMs are about generating language.
Right. So they often work together. An LLM might generate a response in a chatbot, but NLP helps it understand the user's question in the first place.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together, but I am curious. Is this on-premise AI stuff just a trend, or is this something that's here to stay?
That's a great question, and one that leads us into some really interesting discussions about the future of AI, the balance between control and innovation.
And I think we're going to need a whole other segment to unpack all of that.
We definitely will.
So stay tuned, listeners, because we're just getting started with this deep dive on on-premise AI.
We'll be right back after a short break.
Okay, so we're back. And, before the break, we were talking about this kind of tension between innovation and control when it comes to AI.
Yeah, that's a key point.
So can you, elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, think of it this way. Cloud AI is like this, it's like a buffet, right? You go in and there's all this amazing food constantly being updated, new dishes all the time.
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
But you're limited to what they're serving. You don't have control over the menu, so to
Well,
speak.
great, you're at the mercy of the chef.
Exactly. Whereas on-premise AI is more like having your own kitchen. You
Sure.
can choose your ingredients, you can experiment with recipes, you have more control over the final product.
But you also have to do the cooking yourself.
Right, there's more work involved, you have to know what you're doing.
So it's a trade-off, right? With
Mhm.
cloud AI, you're getting the convenience, the latest and greatest, but you're sacrificing some control.
Yeah, and with on-premise, you've got the control, but you might need to be more hands-on, more responsible for keeping things updated, maintaining the system.
And that's where a company like Hexacode comes in, right? They're trying to
Right.
bridge that gap.
Exactly. They want to give you the control and customization of on-premise AI, but without sacrificing ease of use.
And those pre-built applications we talked about, those are a big part of that, right?
Yeah, that's a key part of their strategy. They want to make it as easy as possible for businesses to get started with on-premise AI, even if they don't have a ton of technical expertise.
So they're basically saying, you don't need to be a coding whiz to use this stuff.
Right. You can just pick an application that suits your needs and get going.
Can you give us a specific example? Like, let's say a company in the healthcare industry. How could they use one of these applications?
Sure. Imagine a hospital that wants to identify patients who are at high risk of readmission.
Okay, that's a big issue for hospitals.
Yeah, it's a huge cost driver, and it can obviously impact patient outcomes.
So how could on-premise AI help with that?
Well, they could use an application that analyzes patient data, things like their medical history, demographics, treatment plans,
Right.
and it could flag patients who might need extra attention after they're discharged. Maybe they need follow-up appointments or home care services.
So it's like an early warning system.
Exactly. And it's all based on data, not just gut feeling.
That could be huge, potentially saving lives and resources.
Absolutely. And because it's on premise, the hospital keeps control over that sensitive patient data.
Right, it's not going up to the cloud.
Exactly.
But wouldn't something like this require, like, specialized medical knowledge to set up?
Well, that's where collaboration comes in. You need the AI expertise and the domain expertise working together.
So it's not just about the technology, it's about how you apply it.
Right. The hospital's medical professionals would work with Zooey, Hexacode's partner, to make sure the AI system is properly trained and configured for their specific needs.
So it's a team effort. You can't just plug in a box and expect it to solve all your problems.
No, you need that human element, the expertise, to guide the AI and make sure it's used effectively.
That makes sense. AI is a tool, not a magic bullet.
Exactly. And it's most powerful when it's used in conjunction with human intelligence and experience.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the benefits of on-premise AI, but are there any potential downsides? Anything we should be aware of?
Well, one thing to consider is the need for ongoing maintenance and updates.
Ah, right, because with cloud AI, the provider takes care of all that.
Exactly. They're constantly rolling out updates, patching security vulnerabilities, all behind the scenes.
Whereas with on-premise, you're responsible for that yourself.
Right. You need to have the internal resources to handle it, or you need to rely on a partner like Zoe.
So it's like owning a car versus leasing one. With ownership, you have more control, but you're also responsible for all the upkeep.
That's a good analogy, and for some businesses, that might be a deal breaker.
They might just prefer the simplicity and convenience of the cloud.
Yeah, it really depends on your specific needs and priorities.
It's about finding that right balance, weighing the pros and cons.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
And that's why it's so important to have these conversations, right? To explore the different options and figure out what makes the most sense for you.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Okay, so let's try to recap everything we've learned about this whole on-premise AI thing and, specifically about this Hexacube.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
It has been a lot. It's a lot to digest.
I think that the main takeaway is about control, really. It's about shifting the balance of power.
Okay.
Instead of relying on these big cloud providers, on-premise AI gives you more control over your data and how it's used.
Yeah, that seems to be the recurring theme here, right? It's all about control, control over your data, control over your costs, even control over how the applications are customized.
Exactly. It's like, having your own little AI factory. You get to decide what you build, how you build it, who has access to it.
I love that analogy, the AI factory, and that really resonates, especially in this day and age where data breaches are, constantly in the news.
Right. Data security is paramount, and on-premise AI gives you that peace of mind.
And we talked about how Hexacode is trying to make this whole thing more accessible, with the user-friendly interface and those pre-built applications.
Yeah, they've really lowered the barrier to entry, so to speak.
Right, so you don't have to be, coding genius to use this stuff.
Exactly. You can just pick an application that suits your needs and get started.
And of course, we have to give a shout out to their partner, Zwei. Those guys seem to be playing a really important role.
Oh, absolutely. They're like the AI Sherpas,
Hmm.
guiding businesses through this whole process.
I like that, AI Sherpas.
They provide that expert support, that hand-holding that a lot of businesses need, especially if they're new to this whole world of AI.
I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive on on-premise AI.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has, and we hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. We've covered a lot of ground, but this is really just the beginning of the conversation.
It's an ongoing exploration.
So keep learning, keep asking questions, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to unlock the next big breakthrough in on-premise AI.
The future is full of possibilities.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious.